Now, this past weekend saw the conclusion of this year's Rugby Championship, with New Zealand being crowned the champions despite losing their last match against the Springboks. To talk to us about the weekend's rugby, we have sports journalist Thando Mxoli joining us. Good morning, Thando, and welcome to Sports and Morning Live.
Good morning, Vusiwa, and good morning to your viewers.
Thank you so much. So let's start at the beginning. What did you make of this year's tournament? And also let's speak about the individual performances of the different teams.
It was an interesting tournament because you had Argentina, who struggled against everyone. Then you had Australia, who struggled against New Zealand but managed to they beat South Africa rather easily over the two tests. Then you had New Zealand, who beat Australia, beat Argentina, but somehow struggled against South Africa. Especially, given the game that they did win, a lot of people are saying South Africa were the better team on the day.
Yes.
So it's been a mixed bag of fortunes, but still, there was enough quality on display. It's what rugby fans have been craving for a long time, and I couldn't have asked for a better tournament personally.
I want to delve a little bit deeper into that game that the New Zealand won against the Springboks, and everyone's saying that the Springboks should have easily won that. Where did we lose that game?
I think we walked away from some of our strengths. Our kicking game is very good. And our kicking game has served us well. We've won every trophy available to us. We beat the British and Irish Lions. We were the champions of the Rugby Championship. Yeah. We had a World Cup thanks to that very same kicking game. But what we abandoned was our running game, where guys like Lukanyo Magazolo Mapimpi were not given a chance to show their prowess with ball in hand. There were many chances created in that very same match. But when the time came, the guys did not play what was in front of them. They sort of lost the confidence in their running ability, or the game plan lost the confidence in their running ability. But that said, look, the fact that we created so many chances against a world-class team, that is New Zealand, that's a positive for us. We can look forward to greater results in the future.
Okay, before we get into the discussion I want to have around the coaches, let's talk about the challenge of COVID-19 and the teams having to be in bio bubbles. A lot of them struggling. Is their struggle justified? Let's, for example, look at Argentina and what happened with that team and some of the players.
Argentina are like the circus. They've realized that to play top quality rugby, you need to travel quite a lot. Our guys are not used to that. New Zealand's not used to that. Australia's not used to that.
Yes.
And we've been on the road. Basically, we've been in bio bubbles since before the Lions series, which was almost a month before the actual series started. So our guys have been in bio bubbles for a good part of the year, maybe half of it. That can be taxing on anyone. The familiarity is... A hotel room is not a place where you spend long hours.
Yes.
And they've spent too much time in bio bubbles. Unfortunately, now with the end of year tour, last time I checked, the news guys were talking about South Africa being on the red list. Now that basically means if we do go and on our end of year tour, we could find ourselves in long bio bubble quarantine scenarios, which are not ideal. But that said, they've coped rather well. They've had the right spirit. The team basically has managed to deal with difficult times in that very same bio bubble, and that shows the character within the team and the leadership, because they've been led well with Sia Kolisi, and they've progressed rather well in terms of growth and in terms of dominating world rugby. They've done that both in terms of encouraging people and bringing in that unity. They're more than just a rugby team.
Yeah.
They unify a country, whether it's through our anger of them not doing well, or it's their success on the field. And they've done that very well. And that takes a lot in those circumstances. They've been in a bio bubble for far too long. But at least they're going to come back now for about, I think, 2 weeks, where they can go back to their homes, they can go back and meet their families and all that kind of stuff. But still, it's emotionally taxing to be in a bio bubble for that long.
Unfortunately, it is the reality that we now live in. Let's move on to the discussion around the coaches now. A lot of them have come under scrutiny, especially South Africa's coach as well as New Zealand's coach in this championship. Is that justified?
It is. Jacques Minauba, when he got the job initially, a lot of people asked, how can your first head coach position be with the world champions? He's had difficulties. He's won against the Lions, which is a credit to him as a head coach. That goes on his CV. But also, like we talked about earlier in that first game against New Zealand, they found themselves wanting. And a lot of people have said maybe the coaching was lacking. We saw in this past game, which they won this weekend, when he took out the entire front row a minute before half time. And people are asking, what's the point? It's not like anything is going to change a minute before half time. It baffles the brain at times what the thinking is, but still, we have to give him credit. He's beaten New Zealand, he's beaten Argentina, he's won a Lions series, and it takes a decent coach to do that. He's got some sort of ability, but look, he has to win over the South African public. He has to show that he is not Russ's man, he is his own man. That takes results, and hopefully also the team selections, a lot of people have criticized him over that. But he stuck to his guns, and sometimes they've worked, sometimes they haven't.
And on the side of New Zealand?
New Zealand were a team in transition under Steve Hansen that had a lot of success. Ian Foster has come in, and also a lot of people were saying there was a guy called Scott Robertson with the Crusaders who has won multiple Super Rugby titles. They said he should be given the job ahead of Ian Foster. Ian Foster, as an assistant to Steve Hansen, basically he was a continuity appointment whereby, look, he's been here, he's been part of the success. Going forward, why do you want to break that? If you're going to rebuild the best of New Zealand rugby at that level, you do it with someone who's coached at that level. Scott Robertson has not coached at international level, despite the successes he had. But the question has always been, can he get the best out of the current players? And a lot of people have said, Ian Foster, as good as he is as a coach, is maybe not getting the best out of these current players. Broden Barrett, for example, is another one. This weekend, he was not very good at game management, and the one thing that a lot of people criticized, they said, why do you keep a guy like Richie Mwanga on the bench who can control the game a lot better? New Zealand lost this game because when they were in the lead, they did not control the match. They gave away possession far too easily. And those are things that top coaches will drill into their teams. When you're in the lead, you stay in the lead.
And you don't give it away.
No.
Let's talk about the Springboks and their game plan. It's been criticized extensively, especially with the Australia games, and everyone's saying those should have been won by the Springboks. What are your thoughts on that?
The game plan is fine for me. Kicking gains you ground, especially when it's done very well, especially when you have good quality kicks that you can compete for. So you gain a lot of territory in it. And also, with the territory, you get into positions whereby you can earn points. That is the benefit of kicking. But there comes a time where you kick and you gain possession, and you need to run the ball to score the tries. The opportunity is there because of this good kick that you've put in. This is where the Springboks have failed themselves in a couple of times, whether it's Australia, whether it's New Zealand, the games they've lost. They've created opportunities to score tries, and they haven't taken them. They've decided to stick to a game plan, a template, which has served them well. We can't walk away from the fact that that template has served them extremely well. They've won everything with that template. But at times, it's like buying a steak. You need to put seasoning to it. No matter how well you cook it, there needs to be seasoning. Now, the problem with the game plan, the difference which saw this past weekend, the Springboks actually backed their runners. We saw the likes of Lucanio putting in that wonder pass behind his back. We saw Magazolo Mapimpi scoring a try. Those are things that were missing with the initial game plan, where we were too conservative. But when we let our guys play, we came to the fore and we showed the quality both on attack and with ball in hand.
Let's now talk about this last game that the Springboks went into. A lot of discussion around we're just playing for pride, but it wasn't just that, because following that result, the Springboks are now back to being number one in terms of the world rankings.
It's never just about pride when you take on New Zealand. We played a package last week where Corpus Visa was saying it's all good being a Springbok, but you need to be a Springbok that has beaten New Zealand. And the door swings both ways. All Blacks judge themselves against South Africa. It's a badge of honor to win this fixture. So it was an important match for both sides. It took us back to the top of the world rankings. A lot of people have criticized our being number one because we haven't played a lot of rugby.
Yeah.
But that said, look, we have beaten whoever has been in front of us. We have lost, 3 games? We've lost a lot less games than we've won. So you can't sit and say we don't deserve to be there. We are the world champions. We are the number 1 ranked side in the world. We've beaten the Lions. Those are pretty decent things to have on your CV in 1 year, where you've had a different coaching staff and you've brought in new elements to a team that has to evolve at some point going into France, which is the next World Cup.
Well, thank you so much, Thando. That is, of course, Thando Mxoli, sports journalist. We now throw it back to Leanne and Sakina.